And I think if you look at the history of crypto, it started off from a financial perspective. The birth of Bitcoin really started because of a financial crisis. And so it was dominated initially through people that came in from a Wall Street perspective. And that was really the narrative of crypto, arguably for the first 10 years, right? However, recently, and particularly in the last 12 to 18 months, actually the narrative of crypto has changed. It's started from a perspective of culture, meaning NFTs, gaming, art. And while there's of course speculators that are entering the space as well, actually the way that most people are onboarded now come from that mindset, which means that we're now at this point where we're shifting from I'm in crypto because I just want to make money to I'm in crypto for the culture, I'm in crypto for a better future, and I'm in basically the Web3 space because I believe in what it means for me and the creator. So I think that's the optimism, and you can feel this with the youth as well. I was just in Korea about a month and a half ago, so for Korea Blockchain Week, and when I was talking to people there, I thought, people should be depressed because of what happened with Terra and everything. And everyone's like, well, yeah, that was too bad, but hey, let's just go. We need to build here. So it's a completely different feeling. It's not actually just about the price. It's really about decentralization and the democratization of the web. And I think when people think about Web3 and blockchain in particular, maybe they don't express it that way, but it is a political, socio-economic movement. Blockchain as a technology in and of itself isn't particularly special. It's a distributed ledger, right? But what it allows for is the kind of political thinking that you hadn't been able to do before. Freedom, digital property rights, decentralized autonomous organizations. Those are actually, if you think about it, political structures. And it draws people in because they care about it. They may not fully understand politics as its nature, but they understand that, hey, this kind of thing is important for me. We need to own these things. I want to have a say in my future. And that means that I have to follow a system that does that. And they've come to realize also that the Web2 platforms, even though they might not think of Facebook as a political platform, I would argue Facebook does make a political statement in the way that they determine their news, what is being viewed, what is seen, the fact that they censor. That in itself is a form of a political statement as well. And people are railing against it. That's why Web3 is so promising. I think it's already changing right now. For instance, if you look at one of our projects, Phantom Galaxies, the way that they dealt with this, they gave everyone free NFTs first in the gaming economy to basically participate in the game. And then they launched the game for people to try. The value of the game then basically started to grow as a result of that, which by the way is not that different from traditional free-to-play games. In traditional free-to-game games, you don't download an app from the App Store with a coming soon game, right, or a poster. You're actually downloading a game that you can try, and if you like the game, then you're willing to pay some money. That's actually the model that's evolving in Web3 gaming as well. That actually is quite a natural evolution. Now, when you enter the space that way, it doesn't allow for as much movement for speculators to come in because speculators have to then determine against the actual utility. So for instance, the scarcity is different, right? When you announce only 1,000 or 10,000 assets, you're automatically creating a scarce number. But if you have a generation system that's based on the number of players, for instance, then actually the scarcity isn't quite the same as we have in the real world. Like, for instance, what does a car manufacturer do when there's a demand for their cars? Well, they make more cars, for instance, right? And while the utility is there and value can be generated, it doesn't just have to come from the fact that there will only ever be X number of cars, right? You have to keep a balance of that. And I think that's what's happening in many of the gaming models. So first of all, when you think about value, whatever we purchase in the physical world, how much of that value comes from the fact that it's physical in nature or has utility? If we actually bought everything just for utility, then we would all be only wearing the same color clothes, and we probably also only be driving the same kind of car, right? But we choose to have different cars because they have fenders, or because they're fast looking, or because they're red, or because they've got exciting designers, and we pay them a premium. And why we do that is because we think that there's an attached value. So one of the secrets, I would say, around why PFP projects do so well, some of them anyway, isn't just because of the fact that they're scarce. That's one narrative. Actually, it's because of the fact that they have unique traits that speak something to you or to someone else. You see that in art as well. Some people, for instance, care about numerology, and they go, oh, I want to buy this thing that has the number 8 in it, even though it looks exactly the same. Who knows why it's more valuable? Or like, for instance, what we do with Pokemon cards. You have a whole selection of them. They all look very similar, but someone prefers the card from this one or the other, maybe because it's from a famous player, maybe because they have a certain serialization. We do the same with digital assets as well. But I think, when it comes to something like Bored Apes, for instance, the other innovation comes from the actual IP licensing structure that exists inside Bored Apes. And that's the powerful thing as well. So on one hand, you could say, yes, it's exclusive because I can buy only just one of 10,000 NFTs. But when I buy this NFT, I have the ability to commercialize it. So now you have, Bored Ape sort of, burger houses, and you have T-shirts, and in fact, my Bored Ape was recently featured at a Vivienne Tam sort of New York Fashion Week show, right? And these are all ways in which you can commercialize your assets, which was something that you couldn't do before. That kind of IP rights sharing didn't exist. So yes, it may seem more expensive, but the value you receive from it is more than just something that sort of is a visual representation. I mean, it's a cliche when they say this in Web3, but it is about community formation. And it doesn't need to be that you need to have something that blows up where millions and millions of users love it. In fact, you can have a very successful collection with just thousands and thousands of users. If you look, for instance, the sort of, I think I was talking to someone at Sotheby's, and he was telling me my actual core audience is only hundreds of thousands of users, because it's those people who buy the art, right? You don't need to have, again, millions and millions of fans and audiences out there that do that. Now, the other thing about sort of NFT artists, which is really powerful here, is that, again, you can play with the models. On one hand, you have those that do exclusive one-on-ones, right? But then you have other ones that basically go CC0, and they basically say, hey, you can own this art, but once you own the art, we give it to everyone in the world for free. And that maybe could be controversial for some, but there's a very clear thinking around it. For instance, think about, why is the Mona Lisa famous? And why is she the most valuable painting in the world? Look, we're involved in so many projects. It's almost a bit like picking my favorite children, so I think it's hard to do that. However, first of all, I'll pick a few, right? Obviously, Sandbox we're super excited about because it's still, I would say, the premier metaverse land destination. And if you want to learn anything about what it means to have virtual land, I think Sandbox is probably one of the best experiences. If you want to experience basically games that are very advanced, that you can actually play and own NFTs, I would suggest look at Phantom Galaxies, look at Life Beyond. These are two projects that have demonstrated that you can actually build a strong gaming community without actually selling something up front. You can actually build a real sort of experience out of that. And then, of course, I'm part of the ApeCoin Council. It's really important sort of metaverse token. It's part of an ecosystem that I think, if you want to understand the culture of how decentralized autonomous organizations work in the formation of Web3 culture, then you absolutely have to at least check out ApeCoin. So I think one of the most powerful things that Web3 has done, particularly if you look at the example of Axie Infinity and the Philippines, is that it's basically taken an entire group of people that were unbanked and basically gave them a financial platform, but through the medium of games. And I think this is very true for Asia in general, because the other thing about Asia is that even though the Asian peninsula has the most internet users in the world, we're still at only around 60 to 70% internet penetration. And the reason why they don't have internet penetration has to do with access, and most of them don't have bank accounts. So it actually means, from that perspective, just taking it from that lens, never mind just broad NFT and Web3 adoption, you can onboard an entire group of new people who are not online at all into basically Web3, allowing them to leapfrog.
I guess if you look at the Southeast Asian area, there's different cultures coming together, and I think that's the key, right? If we can now bring this culture into Web3, bring people together, because though we are all side by side and neighbors, there are a lot of different cultural nuances. And this is where Web3 can solve a big problem. And we also believe that Web3 has a key role to play with impact, kind of solving today's problems, like what Yat said, accessibility, bringing more people into the unbanked. But we also believe that there are solutions for the environment, right? For solutions for gender diversity, that we can now bring that into Web3, and that would bring a far bigger community in. And everyone will come and exchange culture and be a part of that growing community. So I think still infrastructure is still not there. To get into Web3, you still need a Web3 wallet, and I think that needs to become a lot more seamless. And people, we have to drop the word NFT, right? Make it so seamless that people don't even realize that they're actually interacting in Web3, and that's where we will actually start seeing a lot more mass adoption.
So maybe to add to that, I think education is perhaps one of the most important things here. Because, opening up a bank account is still harder than opening up a crypto wallet, for instance. So it's a matter of how do you educate people to get into that space. And the reason they do that, as we've seen in the Philippines, is because, it's value. I'm part of the system if I have this, right? If I don't have a bank account, for instance, then I'm not part of a financial system in which I, can participate in the culture and the society in which I am in. And that's basically where I think we need to go with Web3 as well. There are some aspects where we need to make it absolutely user-friendly, I agree. On the other hand, if you make it too user-friendly, you move away from decentralization into centralization. And it's not to say that everyone in the world has to be existing decentralized, but you do need enough people to be in a decentralized environment. Otherwise, you go back to Web2. right? And it's a little bit like, how do you defend a democracy? You don't need every person in a democracy to vote. You just need enough. And that's true here as well. So I think education, and maybe just to close on this one, what is the biggest threat to a democratic system is a lack of education. So I would say the biggest threat for decentralized ecosystems in Web3 is therefore also a lack of education.